All right. Hello, everyone. Mr. No Souls here, and today we are going over Chapter 2, creating a character. But first things first, we're going to take a look at this character sheet. This is where a lot of the more formalized characters that you're going to make are going. You're going to have all your information kind of here, and this is what you're supposed to be referencing. Um, but you often don't use all of this at once. Um, and there's nothing that stops you from just using a notepad or like a napkin or anything else that you could write on or leave a note into to track all this information. You don't need all this. And sometimes having a piece of paper when you have to, constantly write over and then erase and write over it again, 6, 7 times, it starts ruining the paper. So we're just going to go high level look over all of this. This is where you're going to name your character. This is where you're going to put a background of it. If you're an acolyte, if you're a former thief, you're a mercenary, noble, so on. This is where you're going to have your species. Your Goliath, your human, your not barbarian. That's your class. Um, your Aarakocra, elves, dwarves, orcs, and so on. Fighter, rogue, wizard, class goes here. If you're a spell thief or a necromancer or a vengeance paladin, that's where your subclass would go. This is where you put your level. And level is slightly different than class level. So the overall your level is how many times you've leveled up, but you could put that level into different classes, and it's called multiclassing. So you could, for instance, have 3 levels in fighter and 2 levels in cleric. And in the older editions of D&D, I don't know if this is still true, but like paladin was a multi-class. You couldn't actually start off as a paladin. You had to actually level up both fighter and cleric and then get it. And I always thought that made more sense than starting off as a paladin, um, in a way. But eh, that's it's a small flavor thing, and you can entirely homebrew it and just put certain classes off limits. That's kind of what I'm thinking of doing, just only allowing basic classes right out the gate. Um, and because of it, it tends to relegate people to more simpler choices. If people, not that there is a lot of difficulty starting out. I think all the classes are viable in the last edition. It's just I feel like some of them are a little more powerful than others, and like you could argue like cleric is extremely strong if you know exactly what you're building and you really look at like min-maxing meta kind of stuff. Clerics are devastating, but right out the gate I feel like a paladin tends to be a little bit stronger than a cleric. um, so it's really where the leveling and like kind of if you're a front loaded class more or back loaded class, uh, a lot of things occur. But I'm digressing here. Your armor class, that is what we were talking about, is how hard you're to hit. How good is your dexterity and your armor, and do you have like natural bonuses and stuff like that to it. So you have your hit points. This is what you're currently at. That is what it can maximum go up to, and then the temp hit points that can sit on top of it. Your hit dice. Hit dice is determined by what class you are leveling. So I always feel like this is kind of weird to have that there. But the thing is like a fighter, if I remember, is like a D8 or a D10. Or maybe D10 is barbarian. But then like wizards, their hit dice is a D4. So whenever they level up, they will roll like 4 of them or 5 of them or whatever I forget what the exact number is, but you will roll a certain number of it, and you will take the average, or we'll go over that in more detail a little bit. But effectively, that hit dice is what determines the probability and maximum of value that you can get for health as you level up. And that's why leveling up some classes make them more tankier than others, is partially due to this hit dice impact. And then also Constitution also plays a factor. Then, of course, you have your death saving throws, which determines whether or not, if you're knocked to 0 HP and unconscious, whether or not you're going to stabilize and be unconscious, or you straight up die. This is the determiner right there. Then you have your proficiency bonus. Every class has a certain impact on this, and these are proficiencies for many different skills. Initiative, that is, how quickly you're going to react to things. It's re-rolled every time. Speed is determined more by your race and feats, how fast you move. Size is how big you are. Something that fits a dwarf is going to be far too small for Goliath, unless it's magical, of course, and able to shape to the individual person. And passive perception is your ability to actually spot things while walking around, be it a trap or a dandelion. Um, this is what rules your I'm not looking for something, but I see it kind of thing. And some classes are better at this than others. Um, then you have your general stats, and now they have all the individual skills that they fall under right there, which is actually kind of nice. I have to admit, I like this kind of layout. It's well put together. Then you have your damage and cantrips. These are your things that you can use over and over and over again. You just put them in here, put the notes of how they work, names, and so on. These are your class features. You get them as you level up, and your subclass will also change what class features you get. Um, your equipment training and proficiencies. So, you know, technically speaking, you you can get just straight to heavy and have no proficiency in medium and light. Um, but it kind of forces you to always use heavy. Not that you're going to get a massive detriment. Um, if you're rocking light armor, I think everyone just about doesn't get a detriment from light armor unless you're a spellcaster. Some of them have no ability at all. And I guess there's also a possibility of the classes that have like natural armor, like your monk and barbarians. They have natural armor as well, so I guess you would have some possible detriments to using these things depending on how your character is set up. But again, those are more situational. I wouldn't really worry about it too much. Um, Spellcasting modifier. If you're a spellcaster, this will determine what your stat determines your spellcaster. Some of them are charisma, some of them are intelligence. Um, Really, it's intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. You have one of these three as normally your spellcasting modifier. This is how good you are at resisting spell failure. I don't really worry too much about spell failure, but technically it is always a thing. Spell attack bonus. This is your bonus to your spell's attack, effectively. Um, then you have how many, levels you have, so you can write out how many spells you have per level, and then you can track, how many you have. There you go. Now, I think you can end up with a lot more than 4 level 1 spells, but I'm not sure with the newer classes and the way they're set up. Description of your appearance, backstory and personality, what's your alignment, lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful chaotic. What is it? Oh, it was no, it was like lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, and then it's like lawful neutral, neutral neutral, or true neutral, and then it's like chaotic neutral, and then it's like lawful evil, um, so on and so on. I believe that's the chart. I'm blanking on it a little bit. What languages do you have? Do you speak Dwarven? Do you speak Common? Do you speak a specific type of Elvish or Arc- Arcana or whatever, like the demon languages? Can you speak those languages? Cantrips and prepared spells. These are. I think you also put your scrolls in here. But yeah, these are all your spells, and whether or not you have like concentration or the resources or material or rituals or the materials, so you can list out what exactly they are and like some general details on them. So overall this is good. Oh, and then these are your copper pieces. If I remember correctly, it's 100 copper to 1 silver piece, 100 silver pieces to electrum, then it's 100 to gold pieces, and then it's platinum. And that's the breakdown. Normally, so some worlds just have you straight working only with one currency, really only in gold. I generally prefer keeping players in the lower levels of coins, and really making those like gold coins something that's very rare. So just like a heads up to my players if you're watching this, generally speaking, I like to play with the full spread of value. And yeah, that is a character sheet. So now that we've spent a good 10 minutes explaining what the character sheet looks like, let's talk about the actual details of getting it all ready and set up. So Dmitry Burmak made this little piece of art, and that is quite nice. Oh, there's a mimic there, looks like a wyvern maybe, or maybe a baby dragon. Um, and those look like goblins. And some other types of Fae and Owlbear. Yeah, that is lovely. I like this. This is a nice little thing. World traveling explorers Hank, Bobby, Sheila, and Diana and Presto stand on the threshold of their next adventure. So characters are the building blocks really of any game. They really like impact how the entire campaign is going to run through. A group of 5 fighters are going to handle a like high magic setting very differently than an entire party of wizards. The tools available to them are drastically different. um, but that doesn't mean that there can't be some parallels or it can't be a very interesting um, campaign to run. But as a DM and as a player, you have to be cognizant of the environment that you're in and the world that's getting built. Uh, and it's not a lot of fun if you don't really really have a conversation with your players on what they're enjoying and what they're liking and what they're not liking. So generally, the place where you set the ground rules of all that, oh, that's my alarm telling me it's 7:45, is your session 0. This is normally where you have the start of the campaign, where you go through all the details and rules about how you're going to make characters, um, some things to include or avoid. It really gives you the overarching like themes of the campaign. Um, and if you're like for instance going a ranger and they have favorite terrain and stuff like that, if you pick Underdark as one of your favorite terrains, but you never go to the Underdark, that really hamstrings the class. So these kind of conversations are critical for some classes more than others. Um, so yeah, choosing a character sheet. Sorry, I speak English, I swear. There are a lot of different types. The type that I showed is just the most recent iteration of them. Sometimes they have all the skills in a separate page, sometimes they don't, but you really, I wouldn't be too worried about it. Let's see here now. Okay, so high level, creating your character. First the first thing you do is you choose a class. Now, I sometimes disagree with this. Sometimes it starts off with choosing a race. Um, and the reason for this, let's start with this, is if you go with a race, you have more of a thematic idea of where you fit in with the world. And many DMs, I feel, put restrictions on what races you can play as because that really affects the tone of the world. If it's a world overrun by orcs and they're the main bad guy, um, maybe the DM doesn't want the players to be orcs. So, figuring out what race you're going to be at the start, and maybe because you wanted some particular like feature that orcs are normally running with, or like racial, um maybe you no longer want to be a barbarian or a fighter and you would rather be an artificer or something like that. So have a conversation with your DM before you just start picking these things. And don't take this as like a hard, these are the order that you're going to do things in. You can jump around a little bit, but generally you're going to start either with the class or with the race. That is normally how you start off. Um, then you're going to choose a class. There's quite a few different vocations. They all have special talents and favored tactics. Then you pick the origin, and here they choose the background of the species in origin. Um, so they're effectively combining the two now. And that is how your character will spend the years leading up to the adventure. What are the character's ancestors, which affects how did that character come to exist. Determining the ability score, choosing the alignment. Are you a good person? Are you a bad person? A lot of DMs prefer not to have like evil characters in their campaign because sometimes it causes a lot of friction. But sometimes it's fun to have an entire party that's full of evil and then one really good guy in there. Vox Machina is like a really funny example of where everyone's kind of on the neutral scale, and then you have Pike, who's just, can we not murder everyone today? It's funny, like there is something to parties that are built like that, that not everyone is good, or you have like the outlier. But if you're doing a lot of role playing, you just have to be aware that it can cause friction between the players and the characters. Okay, these are now the classes. And they actually call out like high and low and stuff like that. Now that's kind of interesting. They haven't done that previously. So the barbarian, the bard, the cleric, the druid, the fighter, the monk, the paladin, the ranger, the rogue, the sorcerer, the warlock, and the wizard. Um, and I'm not going to dig too much into that right now, but generally speaking, the barbarians are built for battle. They are the guys that want to rumble at all times of the week. They are the guys that drink and the guys that fight. Um, they don't always drink. Some of them are nice. They're just like, I'm going to be very peaceful. And then it's like you stepped on a plant, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to kill your entire family because I love that plant from the day it was made. Bards, there is a joke that they are the horniest class, and they are always trying to seduce the dragon. That's the joke. But I've met all different types of people that play bards. Not everyone plays them that way, but it is really funny when they are played as the horniest character, because they are charisma based characters, so they can do a lot of ridiculous stuff. Um, and they also have like charms and other effects that can mess with people's mental ability. Again, that makes them a little more difficult though, because it's a very creative class. It can be extremely powerful and extremely weak simply from the setting, what you're fighting, and then just how creative you are. So if you don't feel like you're a very creative person, or you're not the most confident with the setting, maybe stay away from it. Consider going for like, I don't know, paladin, or yeah, maybe a wizard. Wizard might be a better call. Um, but it kind of depends. Bards also are skill monkeys, and the only other person that's probably close as far as like ability to be a support character is a rogue. Rogues are masters outside of combat. They are also very strong in combat, but they're all over the place as far as like what they can do. Clerics, these people are normally typecasted as healers. Let me tell you, if you decide to say, I am not casting a single healing spell this entire game, and you decide I am going to go down the domain of war, you can rumble, and people will fear you. You are the gods' avatar, and the gods will make sure you're respected because they're very, very powerful. But it really requires you to understand what the class can do. And if you want to play it, very simply, being a heal bot is powerful. And there very few people can even compete with the amount of healing you can put out. But if you want to say screw healing, I am here to do damage, that is entirely viable as well. And I really feel like that has to be stated that yeah, if you want to go a mix of healing and damage, you're going to still you're going to be able to keep toe to toe with a lot of other groups. Maybe you won't have the highest DPS, but you are going to be someone that people are going to respect. Don't let the name scare you away and think that you're just a healer. You can hold the line. You tanky clerics are a thing. Um, druids, I really feel D&D's like more recent breakout into media and movies has brought a lot of attention to this class. You know, owlbears are absolutely hilarious to just look at, and they are terrifying. They are extremely strong, they're smart, and they're very capable. And Druid's abilities to talk to animals and interact with nature make them both interesting as far as role playing, but also in the utility and support roles that they can ride. They also are pretty strong melee fighters if they go specific routes, but they can also be strong spellcasters. Um, it really comes down to whether or not you want to be reliant on wild shape or if you want to be more into the spell casting. Overall, it's a difficult class, but if you can lean into some like specific components of the subclasses, this is really fun. I don't I wouldn't say be scared of its complexity. It's high, but it, it's high in the way that there are so many choices that you can go down. Fighter. They're considered the bread and butter class. Um, I really recommend people to try them out at some point or another. A lot of people look at it and say, "Oh, it's probably just basic. I mean, why can't I just have spells or other things like that?" And it's like, no, don't disrespect a fighter. A fighter can go toe to toe with any other class, especially if they have a little bit of prep time to like figure out what they're going up against. Um, they're very close to a Witcher if you know what you're doing and you bring magic items and other equipment, or you multi-class. You can get some very simple, quick spells that can turn you into a devastating combatant, and then all of a sudden you're like a spellblade. You know, don't laugh at them. Fighters can come into their own, and it's very easy to get a like 1, 2, 3 point dip in another class to then just turn a fighter into an absolute like demon on the battlefield. And they can go be all DPS, they can be tanky, they can be high mobility, they can be ranged, they can be melee. Um, yeah, they're extremely flexible and they're very straightforward. Sure, maybe out the bat they might not seem as colorful, but don't let that fool you. There is a lot you can do when your strength is the bread and butter of everything. Like that's it. You're just fundamentally good. Monks. These are the guys that if you want to be a martial artist or you wanted to be like Avatar or something like that, monks are the master of unarmed combat and evasion tanking the meta. They're extremely fast, they're extremely dexterous. You can do a lot with them. I don't know how they're treated in the most recent edition because they have jumped from they are immensely powerful to they're strong to they are a different flavor of fighter to they are immensely powerful, and they really seem to jump around a lot. We're going to have to look a little closer into the monk to know where they sit in this edition, but overall they are generally a pretty good no armor. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to mess people up. they're a great choice. Paladins, I think this is a misnomer. They say they like defense. That's true, but they also like smite, and they like to smite and then smite again and smite some more. And when they come into the area and they find things that they do not like, they can drop hammers. Um, I personally love paladins rocking them all. And you go in there and you hit something for a massive amount of base damage, and then you follow it up with smite. And yeah, you can delete something in 2, 3 turns, and you both have a strong melee component, but you also have a very strong magic component as well. And you have a little bit of healing, and you have auras. So it's a lot of support, a lot of defense, a lot of offense. It kind of all comes right out the bat. I feel paladins are a little bit stronger right off the like level 1, 2, and 3. They're one of the strongest classes in my opinions in previous editions. And then they just kept getting stronger. But other classes could kind of ramp past them in specific cases. I don't know where paladins stand anymore. They might have been nerfed or they might have been improved. Not sure. Rangers are kind of in a difficult spot. Um, they're kind of a fighter. They're not really a fighter. They're typecast as like Aragorn kind of thing. Uh, a lot of the times I feel like fighters, because they're just so strong at the fundamentals, they normally do a little better than the ranger going out. And the ranger though has pets, they also have spells, they have advantages in certain types of environments. Calling them masters of survival I think are quite accurate. They are very powerful if you need to track down certain enemies. They're very powerful in picking a target and taking them out. Um, they're not too different than World of Warcraft's hunter class. Um, and they do have a mix of favoriting like dual wielding, and they do have a favoriting of ranged, but you normally have to pick one or the other. I don't Sometimes you can kind of build them as a switch hitter where it's like you hit them with range, you hit them with melee, and then you can go back to range. But normally in the previous editions I felt like you stuck with one. uh, I've heard that rangers have gotten a pretty big improvement, but we'll see as we go through. Rogues, they are the sneaky, stabby, you wish you could see me, but my god, you're not going to find me. They have every single skill that you can think of and then some. And if you have, oh, I need to go and unlock this door. I have a DC check of 18. Well, I base have a 24. So do I have to roll DM? Yeah, they're those guys. They're the guys that if there's a problem, they're the solution. They are phenomenal outside of combat support. They are very good for taking down one single target or getting into a place and not being found. Rogues are powerful. They are very, very powerful. The thing is they might not always be able to do as much DPS as your paladin, as your fighter, as your pure DPS cleric or barbarian or bard, or your like sorcerer, wizard, warlock group. They don't always max out on the damage unless it's in a specific situation. That said, don't ever look down on them. Otherwise, they will steal everything that you own and they will sell it on the black market. And they will succeed at it too, because they have the skills to do so. The rogue is the keystone class in many longer running campaigns. Uh, but they start off a little weak, in my opinion. Not saying that they're bad. They are very good, even starting out. But again, you have to kind of work at it and be a little creative to get the full value out of them. Sorcerers, they're normally more like bloodline related. They have less flexibility of a wizard, but they come online faster. And they don't always have as much spell slots. But you get access to meta magic and you can do a lot of creative things with these characters. They are a little bit more finicky because you don't necessarily have a full domain that you can go into. You just have like more rail gated. That said, they're very powerful. I've not really played sorcerers. I've always fallen onto the wizard line, but we'll get into that. Warlock, you have the single highest damaging cantrip in the game, Eldritch Blast. It is super powerful. Yeah, they're a great class. They have phenomenal role playing potential. They are a lot of fun. You don't have as many spell slots or spells as every other class, but you have the highest amount of damage right out the gate. Um, you know, Eldritch Blast is a 1d10, and it just gets stronger as you level. Go look at them. Like they're funny. They're a very interesting class. Oh, and you normally have packs with demons or other eldritch entities, fays, magical gods, all sorts of things. Normally on the darker side. The warlock is like the counter ego to the cleric, in my opinion. Now the wizard, these are the guys that were like, you know what? I want to formalize my education in magic. I want to be able to do things and really have the entire world of magic open to me. They have some of the most spells. They have the most spell slots normally. They have the ability to swap out their spells pretty frequently, so they can be prepared for almost any situation if they're, you know, prepping for it. They are gold heavy because you have to spend a lot of money upgrading your spell book. However, um, if you want to be able to drop fireball and then fireball again and then fireball a third time, and you know what, this situation also seems fireball shaped, so I would like to fireball, and then you know what, I would like to just make a giant hailstorm and flood the room and then electrocute the room and then fireball the room. You can do it, and you can do that in a couple turns. And if you do things correctly, you could do most of that in one turn. And you turn into this master of dropping damage or debilitating enemies, or you want to like capture people alive, you can do it. Wizards are extremely powerful, and something I should mention though, all these classes down here tend to be more squishy. The druid also tends to be on the squishier side. Um, and the other classes tend to be more on the tanky side. The wizard though has so much ability to protect themselves with magic. You know, they have teleport, greater teleport. They can travel planes. Wizards are extremely powerful. There is nothing they can't solve without like a little bit of magic. You just have to think ahead of time. Um, Balanced parties. You know, as I said, you can run a campaign with just one group of characters, but that's not necessarily the best idea. Normally, you want a more balanced kind of design. You want a frontliner or maybe two frontliners, a range DPS. You probably want someone that's, if not a dedicated healer, at least able to do control or support. And those classes are like your cleric is normally your healer or like controller, but bards also, they have very weak healing, in my opinion, but they have very good support and they have very good control. Druids are a little stronger on the healing side, but they also have the ability to be an off tank. They also have the ability to do some controlling. They're all over the place. So putting these three kind of in line with each other isn't necessarily um, linear, but they can support each other. And you know, if you had a paladin and then you threw a druid in there as well, you know, between the two of them, you probably have enough healing to be able to stay a very aggressive front line and have the sticking power to be able to fight through anything. Um, you know, if you want a very strong front line, you can throw out like your paladin and a barbarian. You don't need a fighter, but a fighter is going to have like the most armor choices and the most weapons that they can swap in and out of. They can bring out a maul, they can bring out a long sword, they can throw out a bow. They have a lot of flexibility out there. But if you wanted someone that was more in a support role, you could go pull a ranger, have them have a bear as a pet or something that's really tanky and aggressive, and you can use a ranger to kind of fill that role. Um, paladins also sitting there. If you want someone that can run up a wall and punch a dude in the face, a monk. They're very hard to catch. So there's a lot of different ways to be that frontline kind of fighter, but these are the people you're probably going to be looking at for your front line in most cases. If you're looking for that kind of skill, hey, we want someone that's able to open locks and scout ahead and do a lot of the prep work for an insertion, these are the classes I would go look to. Bards are very good. They have Pass Without Trace. They have quite a few hiding skills. They also have the ability to cast illusions. They have the ability to muffle and mute things. So they're very strong. And rogues are just straight up good at hiding. And then you have your ranger, which they are very good at tracking and identifying things. They have their pets, which, if you have like a cat or a hawk or something, they can fly over an area and scout for you. Um, they have a lot of skills and they're very useful to identify those entry points. Now, these spellcasters are a little more tricky because the wizard has the biggest spell book possible. There is a lot of potential for just DPS from like the wizard, but then if you wanted more support, the bard is strong, but he doesn't have as many choices as the wizard. He has some unique ones as well, though. So you can't look at these as linear as some of the others, um, but they are still very close. The warlock sorcerer both have very strong spells. They have very niche, powerful options that can allow them to provide very high damage if you're looking for magical damage. If you're looking for more of a support role or for just sheer amount of like adaptability to the environment and situation you're in, they're going to have a little more difficulty, but they are still very strong. They still have that spellcaster ability. They're still able to put out that magical damage. Um, but some of them are going to have more difficulty when you go out of like a forest and natural environments. They might start having some difficulty depending on what their subclass is. Okay. Typically, characters start out at level 1. That's not always true. Sometimes, if you're in a one shot, you might start off at level 5. You don't really know. It's always different. Um, Sometimes it's milestone. You level up when you hit a milestone. Sometimes you're given XP for kills. Sometimes it's split between the party. It really is dependent upon your DM. Yeah, see right here, starting at higher levels. Each class gives you specific types of armor that you can go with, but we will get into that later on. Um, yeah, hold fill in more details on class later. They're extremely complicated, so we're not going to try to spend too much time. I already spent a lot of time simply talking about classes and balance. It's like this is a huge topic. Um, then we have the ability scores. Again, these are some of the backgrounds. Artisan, entertainer, farmer, guard, noble, sailor, and soldier are your strength backgrounds. Your dexterity is, again, the artisan, charlatan, criminal, entertainer, guide, sailor, scribe, soldier, wayfarer. We'll go into these things probably later. Um, but right now, I just want to go high level on what is impacting what. And sometimes a background will give you like 1 or 2 points in different like fields. And normally it's just 1 point. And maybe they'll give you a proficiency in like animal handling or something like that. So just keep that in mind. Constitution, charlatan, criminal, farmer, guide, hermit, merchant, sage, and soldier. Intelligence is your acolyte, artisan, criminal, guard, merchant, noble, sage, and scribe. Wisdom is acolyte, farmer, guard, guide, hermit, sage, sailor, scribe, and wayfarer. Charisma is your acolyte, charlatan, guide, entertainer, sorry, not guide, hermit, merchant, noble, and wayfarer. Normally, you pick only one of these, and they're more or less just a flavor of how you grew up. You can also ask for a custom one. Most DMs are fine with that. So no proficiencies. Your background can give proficiencies in 2 skills and 1 tool. There you go. Those are important to know, but not always. It really depends on how your DM runs things, or if they're going to hand wave some things. Um, Choosing starting equipment. These are going to determine what weapons you have, your armor, what uh, like the spell materials you're going to have, all that kind of stuff. Because some spells have materials that you need or components you have to have before you can cast a spell. And sometimes they're consumed, sometimes they aren't. Some DMs entirely hand wave it away, some DMs do not. So you have to be cognizant of those kind of things. Of course, record all that information. Oh, also, sometimes when you're doing a specific class, they will give you packs or they will give you a gold amount to buy what equipment you want. That is determined by your DM, which way they would prefer. Choosing species. Let's see here. Choosing a species for your character. The following species options are detailed in Chapter 4. Aasimar, Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Goliath, Halfling, Human, Orc, and Tiefling. Once you've chosen a species, write it on your character sheet. Sorry. They determine your size and speed. There you go. Imagine your past and present. Who raised you? Childhood friend. Did you grow up with a pet? Have you ever fallen in love? Who were they? Did you join an organization, guild, religion, or so on? Are you still affiliated with them? What elements of the past inspire you to go on an adventure now? Or maybe why are you forced into this situation, even though maybe you don't want to adventure. Maybe you want to just stick to the farming life, but these darn wolves keep eating like your horse and your sheep and everything else that you like. They've been running through your fields and digging up your cabbages. My cabbages! This is my last and final straw. I'm going to kill all those darn wolves. And yeah, that's how you started your adventure, because you found out that there were too many problems and someone needed to solve them. And apparently that person is you. Go forth, my brave farmer. um Standard languages. Common sign language. Interesting. That's a new one. I don't I don't believe I've ever seen common sign language before. Draconic, Dwarvish, Elvish, Giant, Gnomish, Goblin, Halfling, Orc. And then you have the rare languages that, like if you're Asmar or so on, you might get, which are like your Abyssal, which is Demons of the Abyss speak, Celestial, Deep Speech, which is the like Underdark, the area way underground, you can run into like deep speech down there from the aberrations. Druidic, which is the language of the druids. Infernal, which is so demons and devils are two different groups in D&D, and they are in an eternal war. Um, Primordial, which is the elementals. Sylvian, the Feywilds. Thieves' Cant, which is various thieves groups have it, and it's being able to pretty much speak to. So, like, you'll say, "Hello, how are you?" But in Thieves' Cant, if you're familiar with it, they will be able to say, "Hey, look, we're looking for a monkey, or we're looking for a grave, or we're looking for a locksmith," or something like that. A monkey being someone that can get into areas safely without getting caught. A grave is someone that can put someone down. Locksmith is someone that's going to be able to open up doors and other materials that you're trying to get access to. So thieves' cant is being able to say things to other thieves such that normal people won't be able to pick up the actual meaning behind what's done. And it's not always in speech. You can leave flyers up with specific symbols that entirely change the meaning of what's written on them. There's a lot of different ways to use thieves' cant, and it's not purely speech. um, Undercommon, which is the Underdark. A lot of the denizens down there have their own version of Common, and that is their language. And those are like your deep gnomes, your deep dwarves, um, your dark elves. They normally have Undercommon. Your ability score, there's a bunch of different ways you can go about it. Standard array is 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. 8 is called a dump stat. 15 is considered your like specialty. So you would go put like if you were a fighter, you might put that 15 in strength and that 14 in constitution and that 13 in dex. And then you'd go like 12, 10, 8. And 8 might be your intelligence. It might be your charisma or your wisdom. It's wherever you're feeling like it. There's random generation. You roll 4d6s and record the total of the 3 highest dice. And then you do that 5 more times, and then you have the 6 numbers that you're going to pick. So effectively, you will end up with potentially higher than this. But not always. It's random. Point cost. This is a personal favorite of mine because you can do a standard array. You don't necessarily have to do random. It really depends on what level of fantasy you're going for. The more points you allow, the stronger your characters are out the gate. And it can really affect your capabilities. So 27 point buy is pretty common, but I've heard of 30 point buy and higher than that. But 27, I'd say, is the most common one. Um, Remember the ability scores, um, point costs. So, like, these are how much it costs to go up. So, at 8, you're then at 0. Cost to go get them. 9, it costs 1 additional. 10 becomes 2. 11, it's 3, and so on, so on, so on. So, these are some standard arrays for the classes. You can see the barbarians high in strength, high in dex, high in constitution. Not so great at this. This would be your grog. This is Scanlan. Hands down. Actually, yeah. No, this is probably Scanlan. Um, this would be your pike. This would be your trying to remember her name, Keyleth, Kiki. This would be her. Uh, this would be the guard captain, probably. This would have been the Lord of Thunder. I don't know who that would be. Lady Kima, maybe. Um, Ranger would be Vax. That would be Vax. This would be Vex. Um, Tiberius, if you know who he is, this would be who your Tiberius would be. This would be like Percy, and then nobody really in the group is like this. Um, Tiberius would probably have been more this class than anything else, but that's that. So after assigning your ability scores, adjust them according to your background. These give you the increases of 2 or 1, so on, but they can't increase your score above 20. So it's a real easy way if you go point buy, you put it in there and then you just pre-think, okay, well, I know I'm going to get 2 more in my strength, so I don't actually have to go and spend extra to get that up to like 13, 14, whatever. I'm going to get 2, so I'll leave it at 12, put it somewhere else, and then get the free 2 from my background. So that way I'm at 14. So I have a +2 modifier. And remember, these are the modifier spreads. Then appearance and personality. they these are just kind of roles. They aren't really necessary. They're nice to have. I wouldn't worry too much about this. Um, okay, this is the alignment charts. Sometimes this is important. You know, your paladins are normally on the good side, but there are evil paladins, so they could be on the bottom as well. But your lawful good, your neutral good, your chaotic good, your lawful neutral, neutral, chaotic neutral, lawful evil, neutral evil, and chaotic evil. Um, this is the guy that is going to be your goody two shoes. This is the guy that is going to have a laugh and will try to do the right thing, but it's going to be his way. Neutral is not really concerned with anybody else. They're just going to do whatever it is they feel like. Chaotic neutral is going to be a little bit more random. Lawful neutral will generally adhere to the rules that they are stipulated in up to a point. And then your chaotic evil, they're just causing destruction for the sake of destruction. They're really, it's like the id. Um, they're the id. Neutral evil, they're kind of just in it for themselves. Uh, they're probably going to do some bad things, but they're going to probably have some degree of method to it. These guys have rules and stipulations of when they do their evil deeds, and they exist inside of some kind of system that exists in their mind, or maybe the environment sets upon them. These are the guys that are going to probably make deals, and they're going to be bad deals for you, but they are deals and they will stick to them. So you could use that against them and so on. These are a breakdown of what those are. I would recommend pausing it here and reading through this. Unaligned characters. Most creatures that lack the capacity for rational thought don't have alignments. They are unaligned. Shanks, which are sharks, looks like they're sharks, are savage predators, for example, but they aren't evil. They just don't have an alignment. And that is something that should be kind of remembered. You have to have a certain level of intelligence to have an alignment. Um, I think if you're like an intelligence of 3, you're technically like unaligned or something like that, was my understanding of it. Um, you can roll to see which group you are if you want to be in an individual group. Again, pause it if you want to look at that. Fill in details. These are looking in at what those like saving throws in. You're going to go grab that. I'm going to let you guys read through this. Here is the calculation for your passive perception. It's 10 plus your wisdom, and then you have to check the modifier. So read that. Hit points. Here they call out just generally the spread. Oh, interesting. Sorcerers and wisdom. Huh. They're 6 now. I thought they were 4. Or maybe at later point or earlier on they were 4, but now they look like they went up. Okay. Um, yeah, so here you go. They're now going to tell you how to do your hit dice. Here they talk about what initiative is, armor class, tell you that, attacks, and then they call out the melee attack bonus, which is your strength modifier plus your proficiency. Now, there is a difference between one-handing and two-handing. This is specifically for one-handing. Two-handing is different. Um, Ranged is strength mod, or maybe it's no longer different. We'll have to go further into actually know. Range dexterity plus your proficiency. Spell casting. Spell save DC is 8 plus your spell casting ability plus the proficiency bonus. And spell attack bonus is spell casting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Spell slots, cantrips, and prepared spells. You're going to have to go through your individual group of magic to see what these are. Name your character. You can do that at the start. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, but you know, it, it's not like a thing that is going to determine how effective you are at your class or what racial thing you're going to use or what, anything like that. Then it's like if you want, you can find out what gender you are. It these things are useful for role playing, but if your entire thing is fighting and I'm there for a one shot that we are going into arena and we're going to fight, and you've decided you're a giant suit of magical armor, maybe you don't have a gender. Maybe you're just a suit of armor and that's it. I am not man or woman. I am death. So, don't worry about it. These are going to talk about level advancements. This is what they recommend to be done. If you do milestone, it's different. Um, yeah. So you see what the proficiency bonuses are per leveling up in an individual class. Yeah. And now talking about choosing a level. Later on, we're going to be talking about multiclassing, adjusting hit points and hit dice. So that's, again, you get your health per class you're leveling up. You roll that, you add it into your group. So fixed hit points per class, 7 plus the Constitution modifier, fighters 6 plus the Constitution, 5 for. Oh, this is if you're doing fixed. Okay, there we go. According to new class features, adjust your proficiency bonus as needed, and that's kind of like why having a sheet of paper that's static isn't exactly great because you know it might need to get updated. And after you've done it like 18 times, if you started off at level 1 and then you got all the way to level 18, you know, if you're multi-classing, you have a class of 10, you have a class at like 15, technically I don't think you can do that because you're supposed to stop at like 20 levels or something like that. But it's D&D. You can level up as much as you want. It's really up to the DM. Yeah, it can get a little messy, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. Adjustability modifiers, tiers of play. In tier one, characters have the apprentice adventurers. They're starting to figure things out. The threats they face usually pose a danger to local farmsteads or villages. Once you're into tier two, they start gaining more of the iconic spells. They're now considered veterans. Um, well, maybe they're not considered veterans. They're considered experienced. You're going to have some of the more iconic equipment. They're starting to become dangerous. They are proficient at what they're doing. Um, yeah, so you can run into problems that are like city level, kingdom level. Course, this can vary depending on setting and everything else. At tier 3, once you're at like level to 16, this is what you're breaking out of the mold of you're just a group of adventurers. You are a group of adventurers, and you normally have a name. And people might start coming to you with requests at this point. At this, like these two levels, you are going and trying to find jobs for yourself. At this level, it starts becoming people are petitioning you for help. Uh, and it can be problems with entire regions. Not always, but sometimes. At tier 4, you have pretty much hit like the cap. You are now ready to rumble with the big boys. This is where you're fighting your dragons, your demons, your elder demons. Um, you're dealing with large scale problems. You have some serious tools under your belt. And yeah, you are like the exemplars of your class or your multi class. Um, you are not someone to be trifled with. That said, you can still run into things that are very, very dangerous, and they can destroy even a level 20 character. The universe is as big as your imagination, and if you ever think that you are the toughest thing in the room, your DM will likely throw something to remind you you are still mortal. Um, Bonus feat at level 20. A DM can use feats as a form of advancement after characters reach level 20, providing greater power to characters who have no more levels to gain. Yeah, so I was right. 20 is still the capstone. These are like epic boons and so on, but honestly, sometimes I like letting them go past level 20, just because it's interesting. Starting at higher level, that was something we talked about. Like you can do point buy or like be a group of seasoned adventurers and so on. Normally, you only do this if people have played a couple campaigns or a lot of one shots. It's not the best to start rookies out with the higher level. Creating your character. So, creating a high level character uses the same character creation steps outlined in chapter and rules for Beyond Level 1. Um, yeah, so they just award you a certain amount of XP and a certain amount of point buy, and you just work up from there. Starting equipment. If you're starting 2 to 4, normal starting equipment, you get one common magic item. If you're starting at 5 to 10, you get 500 gold pieces plus 1d10 of 25 gold pieces plus normal starting equipment. And then you get a common and uncommon. If you're going to 11 and 16 as you're starting, which is very rare, but I've heard it happen, um, 5,000 gold pieces plus 1d10 of 250 gold pieces plus normal starting equipment. Then you get 2 commons, 3 uncommons, and a rare. This is an extremely powerful start. You could start off with an entire archetype built out and a lot of power. If you're starting at this level, you're on a power fantasy. Like you're so powerful, it's not even funny. 20,000 gold pieces, 1d10 of 100 or 250 gold pieces plus your standard starting equipment, and then on top of that, you get 2 common magical items, 4 uncommon magical items, 3 rare magical items, and a very rare magical items. Your very rare are literally going to be like legendary whispers of like items. You are going to be so powerful starting out the gate. You're going to start off fighting dragons pretty much. Like that is the point where you're like, yeah, I'm going to go fight an elder dragon and it's going to be a rumble. Um, it'll be a relatively fair-footed fight. This is insane. I like never start a new group of players off at this point. They are most likely going to have extreme difficulty using all these abilities. At the most, you should do 2 to 4, in my opinion. Maybe if you're like exceptional or you have like a lot of veterans and a new person, starting them off at like 5 to 10 might be possible if they can be like babysat their way through it. But I don't know how much fun they're going to have. Multiclassing. This is where you start leveling up multiple classes at once. Um, with this rule, you have the option of gaining levels in new classes whenever you advance in a level, instead of gaining a level in your current class. Doing so let you mix the ability of those classes to realize concepts that a single character class can't do. I feel like most DMs are okay with this. Prerequisites to qualify for a new class, you must have at least 13 in the primary ability of the new class is main score, and then your current class. For example, a barbarian who decides to multi-class into a druid must have the strength and the wisdom scores of 13 or higher, since strength is a primary for barbarian and wisdom is for druids. That's how they say it's done. Um, some classes used to be default, like multi-classes. Your paladin is a very famous example. I believe your ranger was an example. I'll just go here. So let's see here. I believe your bard was a multi-class. Your paladin was a multi-class. I think warlock might have also been a multi-class. Your ranger was a multi-class. So as D&D has gone on, some of the multi-classes have become just starting classes, and I have mixed feelings on it. I think it's okay now. They've done really good at balancing it out and making them more fair. But you have so much coming out the gate that it it's very difficult to do a good balancing with them. So some DMs don't like allowing them um, as classes. They say like core classes or other things like that. Have a conversation with your DM. Just know what classes are going to be available, what races are going to be available, and so on. This is where they're going to talk about hit points, everything else. Actually, I think I've already gone through this. Um, Hold up, where? Oh, multiclassing. Here we go. Back to it. Hit points and hit dice. You gain hit points from your new classes described for level 1, and you gain the level 1 hit points for a class only when total character level is 1. And then you just add them together. So as you go up, you just keep adding them in um, for the individual class. Proficiency bonuses is based on your total character level, not, oh, okay, it's total character, not your particular class, shown in the character adjustment table. For example, if you third level fighter and fifth level or second level rogue, you have a proficiency level of a fifth level character, which is 3. Okay, so that's how that works. How many levels you have overall really affects what your proficiency bonus is. So you get the proficiencies of the class when you level up for the first time in them. Class features. These are some of the specials, which are like extra attacks, spell casting, unarmored defense, and so on. Uh, your individual class will tell you what those are, and when you get a new class, it will tell you what your extra features are going to be. They don't stack, so if you get like medium armor, then medium armor again, you don't become like super good at medium armor. You're just good with medium armor. So armor class, exactly the way that it worked when we read it last time. Unarmored defense or draconic resilience might change how exactly that's calculated, but again, those are dependent upon your class. Extra attacks. Fighters can attack twice very early on. Barbarians also get it. Paladins get it. A lot of the martial classes get multi attacks. Um, it's just a dependent on what exactly your subclass is. Like here, they call out Warlock's Thirsting Blade Invocation, which grants you an extra attack feature with your packed weapon. Um, doesn't give you an additional attack if you have an extra attack. So it's like if you were a fighter, let's say, and you had 2 attacks, and then you went into Warlock and you got Thirsting Blade. You then wouldn't get 4 attacks because it would trigger multiple times. You would get 3 attacks. And then if you got a third attack from fighter, you would then only have 4 attacks. So it doesn't like, you wouldn't have 6 attacks, it would only be 4. It's not going to allow you to exponentially scale or something like that. Spell casting, your capacity for spellcasting depends partly on your combined level of your spellcasting class, and partly on your individual levels in those classes. So pretty much you add them together. Normally this is the spread, but some of them get more level 1 spells, some of them get more um, like level 8 spells. It really is dependent on what class you're leveling up. A wizard gets some of the, I don't know if it's necessarily true anymore, but wizards normally get the most spell casts. So, preparing spells, these are dependent on your class and when you can swap them out. If you can swap them out, is really impacted by those individual classes. Cantrips, these are the spells that you can just perpetually throw out. It will normally tell you when it increases at a specific level, and it's normally impacted by your character's total level, not particularly your class. So that's something to note. So if you take a level 1 dip into Warlock, and then you never spend time in Warlock again, that Eldritch Blast is still getting stronger as you level up in general, um, even though you don't necessarily get all of the Warlock feats. So, spell slots, all your levels in Bard, Cleric, Druid, and Sorcerer and Wizard classes, half your level rounded up in the Paladin and Ranger classes, 1/3 of your Fighter or Rogue levels rounded down if you have the Eldritch Knight or Arcane Trickster subclass. So, these this is effectively how you're determined. These will again be reiterated in the class or subclass. Um, so this is kind of talking about where your individual magic comes from. Table might give you spell slots of a higher level than the spell slots you prepare. You can only use those spell slots to cast. You can use those spell slots, but only to cast lower level spells. So just keep that in mind. Fourth level ranger, third level sorcerer count as a fifth level character when determining your spell slots, counting all your levels as a sorcerer and half your ranger levels, as shown in the multi-class spell table. You would have 4 level 1 spell slots, 3 level 2 spell slots, and 2 level 3 spell slots. However, you can't prepare any third level spells, nor can you prepare any second level ranger spells. You can use the spell slots of those levels to cast the spells you do prepare and potentially have their enhanced effect. So, like Magic Missile, um, instead of being just a level 1 spell, you could cast it at like level 3 if you're high enough. But you didn't level up Wizard or something like that. Pact Magic, feature of Warlock class, and you can use the spell slots of your Pact Magic to cast spells you prepared from the class with spell casting feature. Again, those are specialized. These are trinkets. These are some things you can find or extra abilities that can be sold or used as like what do you call it? They can be like focuses or other things like that. When you make a character, you can roll for a trinket table to gain a tiny trinket. A simple item lightly touched by mystery. The DM might also use this table to help stock a room in a dungeon or fill a creature's pockets. Um, Sometimes you can make these items magical and give them enchanted effects and so on. So that is all of chapter 2, people. We are slowly going through this, and I hope you found this interesting. If you like this, uh, please let me know. And if you think I can do something to improve this, also please let me know. I thank you all for watching, and have a good night. Adios.